All right, now I want to go through Abraham Bomba's testimony. And he's a barber who was at Treblinka. He was one of the Jews who was forced to work there. So he's at the same location as Sukomel, but he's going to give you a slightly different perspective on it. And let's go through this for a bit, but always keep in mind those historian processes. You want to use what a historian would use, which is you have to determine what's reliable, and then you have to determine what's the importance of it. Okay, so let's go through his testimony a little bit here, and this is going through when he's at a barber shop in Israel. The first thing you'll notice is he's showing his face, and clearly he's standing in front of a large, group of people. These are other Jews. These are not people who lived through the Holocaust, but they certainly know about it. So he's talking in front of them about what he was involved in. So let's watch what's going on here. So this is very different at the outset from Franz Sukomel. He is very open about the way he was involved in it. And let's see what he has to say, how he talks about it.
Abraham, can you tell me how did it happen? How were you chosen?
Now, something I want to point out, and again, this is something that goes on throughout, it's going through primary sources, and that's what Shoah is. It's a primary source where he's talking to witnesses about what they saw. And you, as a historian, are sitting in the position of trying to evaluate it. How reliable is it? And one of the things you'll notice is that Bomba, and what Landsman's picking up here, Bomba's not nervous talking about this. He's just going about his day, going about his work. He knows he's got to talk about it. So if you think back to Michael Plotchevnik, he was horrendously nervous because he was deeply affected by what had gone on. And notice right now that Bomba is just going about his business. He seems totally, calm.
They came an order from the Germans to take out the barbers they could get. And they need him for a certain job. What kind of job they needed for it, we didn't know at that time. But we gathered together as many barbers as we could.
How long did it happen after your arrival in Treblinka?
So that, I would say that would happen about 4 weeks after I was in Treblinka.
When was it? It was in the morning?
That was in the morning. That was around 10 o'clock when a transport came to Treblinka, and the woman went into the gas chambers. And they chose some people from the working people over there, and they asked questions who was a barber, who was not a barber.
Now let me stop it there just for a moment. Now, a couple things to observe is, notice for one, he's very calm the entire time he's talking about his very specific memory of when he was chosen. And he had been at Treblinka now for 4 weeks. There is no compelling reason to doubt what he's saying. Does he seem to be covering things up? Doesn't seem to be. And he doesn't seem to be making himself look better than he, probably was. So he's not trying to make himself look good. So I do take his testimony as being reliable at this point. And again, it is different than when you looked at Michael Plotchlovnik, who seemed very, very nervous. And that's why that smile was on his face. Notice Bomba is very comfortable talking about this, not just talking about it, he's talking about it in front of a lot of people. And then he talks about getting chosen as a barber. And they did not tell him why he was chosen. And if you think back to why would they? Why would they need barbers to cut the hair of women who are about to be executed? You don't need a barber, really, if you're just trying to kill people. But think back to that issue of when they covered up the barbed wire with the pine trees, with the branches. Make it appear like it's just, nothing threatening, that there's nothing going on. That's wrong. And then you think as to why they would have barbers, that would make it appear, if we have professionals here, then we're trying to do something that is normal, it's not so threatening. It makes it seem a little less threatening overall if you have it done right. So that's what it seems to me as to why they chose barbers, because they don't have a compelling reason otherwise. To make the process more efficient, well, anybody could cut the hair off, but to make it look like they were doing something that was humane, that's why they selected barbers. That is my analysis of what Bomba's talking about here. But watch him talk. Watch him take it a little further.
I was a barber for quite a number of years. And some of them, they knew me, like from people from Chancellor Harbor and from other places. So naturally, they chose me, and I selected some more barbers, which I know of them, and we got it together.
Professional barbers.
Official, yes. We got it together, and we're waiting for the order. And the order came to go with them, with the Germans. They took us in to the gas chamber, to the second part of the camp in Treblinka.
It was far from the first part.
It was not too far, but it was all covered with gates, barbed wires, and trees covering the gate. That nobody should see there is a gate or there is a place going in to the gas chamber.
Now let me stop there. That is where he's corroborating the testimony of Sukhomel. That tells you that Sukhomel was actually being quite accurate about what he was talking about. That they're covering the barbed wire. He could see it. He knew it was there, but there was clearly an attempt to cover it up with the branches. Why do that? It doesn't seem to help things, but it does give an appearance that's less threatening to the people who are about to be murdered. So that is a place where a witness is corroborating the testimony of another witness. So it seems Sukhomel, on many of his issues, is being fairly accurate, that they were trying to present something that was less threatening. Okay? Let's take it a little bit. Well, let me jump up a bit to where he goes into the process and how it was undertaken. Let me take you up to this. And I really want to emphasize, to notice how cold he is when he talks about other Jews being murdered. And that this is very different than Michael Plotchlovnik's. And notice that he is really, and I want to be careful about how I put this, but he is really, what he's doing, he knows it's making the process move better for the Germans. He knows that. He doesn't have any other choice. He does talk about later on in the testimony that there were always guards with guns. But notice the fact that they always have the Jews directly handling the other Jews. There is a use of Jews to provide kind of a barrier between the Germans who were carrying out the orders, who had the guns, and the Jews who were being murdered. They are always using Jews to help out. And that's what Bomba was doing. He was part of that buffer that the Germans used to undertake this. He knew he was part of that. He most certainly was not there in any willing sense. Did he want to be there? But notice he's always there. He's part of the process. And watch what he does here. This is going from 2530.
Not a body want to take off all the hair, but just to have the imagination that they're getting a nice haircut.
There were no mirrors, no?
No, there were no mirrors. There were just benches, not chairs, but just benches, where we worked about 16, 17 barbers, and we had a lot of women in. Every haircut, it took about 2 minutes, no more than that, because there was a lot of women to come in and to get rid of the hair.
Can you imitate now? How did you do?
Well, how we did? We did as fast as we could, because we were quite a number of professional barbers. And the way we did, we just stopped this and this, and we cut, and we just cut this like this, here and there and there, and this side and this side, and the head was all finished.
With big movements.
With big movement, because we could not waste any time. The other party was waiting already outside, coming in to do the same thing, the same job, the same procedure.
Okay, now I'm going to stop Bomba right there. And I really want to emphasize the fact that he talks about what he did in such a cold manner. He has this manner through most of his testimony. But like Michael Plotchlebnik, it's going to hit a point where he breaks. And it's very important to notice the difference. He talks here in very general terms. This was overall what we did. This is generally what happened. He talks about the overall process that took place over weeks and months that he was a part of. You're going to see a point later on in his testimony, and I do want you to go up until around 42, well, up to 42. You're going to see a point where he can't hold it together, where things break. Watch the nature of it. The testimony changes there, and it's like the way it did with Michael Plotchlebnik. The testimony changes there. It changes to something very specific, to a particular memory, to a point in time. And you're going to see Bomba change out of this, cold and, distant way he speaks, because he has that method of talking about it. He's developed this almost distance from what he was undertaking. So go through that and watch up to 42, and you'll see that with Bomba, and you're going to see the shift when the testimony changes as he talks about it. Okay, so I'll leave it there, but I want you to be aware that he's developed this method of talking about it because that protects him. And remember that with Michael Plotchlebnik, he had developed that smile as a way to protect himself, to deflect things away from the memories that troubled him so much. You're going to see a kind of different approach, but a similar effect that's happened with Bomba. When we go through the witnesses, you're not going to see that going on with the people who undertook the Holocaust, because one of the big differences is that they were dehumanizing the Jews who they were targeting. And that's what I want you to be aware of. It's that process of dehumanizing somebody who's different than you are. That is what is absolutely necessary to undertake something as a genocide, something as horrific as a genocide. You must dehumanize a different type of people and make them different from you and lower than you. And that's what went on amongst so many of the Germans who were undertaking this. And I do want you to be aware that this is something that any type of person could go through. Any type of person. This did, however, go on in Germany during World War II. It goes on throughout history in every type of person. So be careful not to say that this is just the Germans, this is just the Jews, this is just back in World War II. This is something that goes on throughout humanity, and it's a dehumanization process. And you'll see that going on, especially with the German witnesses when they talk about things. You'll find out that the Jews give a distance, and they do develop a coldness so they can talk about it. And that goes on with Bomba. Okay, so make sure you watch all of Bomba's testimony and notice the differences throughout and how he talks about it. Okay, take care, you guys.